This story began 2 years ago when we acquired this abandoned mysterious homestead in the forest. As a result, we want to reconstruct it and create a new cozy place for permanent living, make a secret hideout, and much more interesting things. First of all, we decided to take a look around. In the end, the homestead looks like this, and a little off to the side stands a dilapidated barn with a very interesting history, which we will tell in this video. But let's go in order, so make yourself comfortable and enjoy watching. First, we open the antique door. There is a very interesting mechanism here, and its operation is clearly understandable. Next, we look around inside and find a small stash of vintage wallpaper that has been here for over 60 years. We take out everything valuable and start dismantling and removing the remaining junk. We spent half a day on this, and the second half of the day was spent loading all the junk into the truck bed. The next day, we decided to tidy up the area so that we could move around freely and do some cleaning. After mowing the grass, we discovered a lot of construction debris that is useless, which means it will go into the bed of our old truck. The next step is to head to the attic. This is the last cluttered place. First, we cut out the gable boards, and it immediately became significantly brighter and easier to breathe. There is a lot of junk here, but at the same time, there are artifacts from the past. In one of the chests, we found old letters and notes that turned out to be very touching. Character reference for 7th grade student Nikolai Makara, village of Kanevici, Zhidomliansky Rural Council. The boy has no academic abilities. Throughout the school year, he only studied at a grade of 3. The reason for his poor performance is that the boy is an orphan. The boy's father died at the front. His mother is not biological. The boy is completely abandoned. The boy loves carpentry and metalworking very much. He loves to work at any job. He enjoys participating in artistic activities. There is no opportunity to continue studying. There is nowhere to live and no one to live with. June 10th, 1959. Class teacher ES. After we cleared the attic from the inside, we began the dismantling from the outside. The first thing we tackled was the chimney, and carefully, brick by brick, we started to take it apart. After that, we lightly cleaned the roof and went back up to the attic. After we removed the wooden flooring, we found a huge amount of sawdust mixed with straw underneath. This is how the ceilings were insulated in the past. Our plan is to make this room livable, which means we are collecting the retro insulation into bags and sending it to the landfill. Now we need to reinforce the roof, as it has become very worn out, and the load on the new roofing will be much greater. For this, we are preparing beams, which will be our new rafters. We cut them to size, threw them up into the attic, and are installing them between the old rafter system. We also decided to make an insert with panoramic windows. For this purpose, we will need metal beams. We cleaned them of rust, degreased, and painted them in our workshop. The next day, when the paint dried, we loaded them into the car and took them to the farm. Now it is necessary to prepare the place for the installation of the panoramic insert. Using a saw, we make an opening of the required size. The next step is to lift the metal to the attic and start welding the structure in place. And while the guys are doing this, I will tell you about another story from this house. A letter that was found in this very attic. A letter from Karelia, 1959. Hello dear parents. 1959. Hello dear parents. Mom, brother Kolya, and Uncle Mikhail. In the first lines of my small letter, I want to inform you that I am alive and well, and I wish the same for you. Mom, you write that you sent 3 letters, but I received only 1 from you. I don't know why that is. I am writing the correct address. But please send me envelopes with stamps, otherwise letters do not reach me without a stamp. It cost 1 ruble to send it. This letter without a stamp is considered to require additional payment, and so the postman receives the letter at the post office but may not take it, as she needs to pay 1 ruble, and so she brought it and told me to have a stamp affixed to the envelope. Mom, you write that I might be upset with you about something. No, I am not upset with you at all. Mom, my earnings are like this. I receive 800 rubles a month. Sometimes it's 750, but everything is expensive here. It's not just that things are expensive, but there is also a lack of many items. There is no lard at all right now. It's quite difficult regarding food products at the moment. Mom, I bought a suit for 750 rubles, shoes for 150 rubles, a shirt for 120 rubles, and a coat for 600 rubles. And that's my entire salary. Mom, you are asking me whether I will stay for the winter, or if I will go home. No, I will work through the winter. Please contact Mikhail Nazim. Mom, can you write what kind of farm you have? How are you living now? Did you pick a lot of bags of potatoes? And was the potato good? Mom, what did you get this year in the collective farm? How many grams of what? Mom, which guys got married? And which ones went to the army? And is there a lot of youth working in the collective farm now? Mom, if you can send a couple of kilograms of lard, please do. And also apples, as there are no apples here at all. Mom, I will send you 100 or so rubles. Mom, how are the Lizovs living now? Is grandma and everyone else healthy? And I am finishing writing my letter. Bye. Goodbye. I am waiting for a quick response, like a nightingale in summer. These were the worries and concerns 70 years ago. As a result, over the next week we managed to completely dismantle the old roof decking and replace it with a new one, leaving only a few load-bearing rafters in the foundation. Before installing the glass, we added the missing metal supports and crossbars, reinforced the structure, and properly prepared the surface by degreasing it. Once the foundation is perfectly prepared, the glass is installed as quickly and easily as you can see on the screen. In addition to this panoramic insert, we decided to create another huge panorama that will overlook the terrace. This is what we are working on. The first thing is the earthworks. We removed the soil so that the future floor would be level with the first floor. The next step was to mark the locations for the supports on which the terrace foundation will rest. We do this manually using a drill, digging hole by hole. Now it is necessary to fill all these holes with concrete and stones, literally one working day and it's done. As I mentioned, this wall should be panoramic, but you can't just cut out a load-bearing wall, so the first thing we do is reinforce it with a temporary brace. After which we confidently remove the old wall, where a new one will soon appear. At the base of the future panoramic wall, we dig a trench to create the foundation. We dug, set up the formwork, and literally within half a day, we poured it with concrete. A week later, the concrete dried, we removed the remnants of the old wall, which was a load-bearing element, and brought in a truckload of fresh wood. From it, we will build the extension of the house, which will smoothly transition into the terrace. We unloaded, cut it to size, and prepared it. Then we focused on waterproofing, thoroughly applying mastic to the concrete base and the lower part of the wooden supports. Next, we started assembling our new constructor, Lego for adults, preparing element by element. As a result, in just 2 days, we managed to assemble such a structure. Now, hidden in the shade from the scorching sun, it became much more pleasant to work. We took advantage of this and started laying the foundation for the future terrace. The next day, when the foundation was ready, we brought the scraps of the terrace boards and methodically began nailing them down, element by element. This work took us just over a day, and already the next day we are finishing the surface with sanding and a protective compound. Not far from the house stands an old barn that has practically collapsed over the years. A very strange place, it makes no sense to restore it, so we started to dismantle it. In the end, we will build a nest house in its place. We will talk about this in the upcoming episodes. And now we decided to learn a little more about the history of this barn in the forest wilderness. Not far from our hamlet, on the edge of the forest, there is another house. An elderly grandmother lives there. We asked her about the history of this place. It turns out that there used to be an underground moonshine production in this barn. Many years ago, when producing moonshine was prohibited, such places often appeared in the forests. And here the story ended as follows. The moonshiners who operated in this barn would dump the spent mash right next to it into a huge pit. At that time, timber was being harvested nearby, and the lumberjacks came to investigate the smell. And there they discovered a real factory and called the police. Since then, the homestead has been abandoned, and we will build a fairy tale house in its place. But more on that in the next episode. Now we have the task of renovating the old house, and while the weather permits, we are first focusing on the roofing. They brought special panels for insulating the roof and started insulating a small section that completes the panorama. According to the plan, there will be a small green insert here. For this, we welded this kind of structure in our workshop. We are placing this metal frame in the future lawn area, securing it and covering it with soil. Grass is intended to grow in it, and while it germinates, we are working on the rest of the roof. We are laying the waterproofing as the first layer on the terrace roof. Since it will be an open area, we will not insulate it, but we will insulate the rest of the roof with panels, first laying them on adhesive. This work stretched over 2 weeks, and as you can see, the grass has started to slowly germinate by this time. The next step is to create the battens. In the process, we took a beam, treated it carefully with antiseptic and secured it on the insulation. After the battens are ready, we unload the OSB boards and cover the entire roof with them, sheet by sheet. After this operation is completed, we move on to the next one. We roll out the roof with a special insulating material for waterproofing. This is done quickly and easily. And after a couple of hours, we can move on. Next, we have the final finishing. This is called shingles. A roof made of natural wood. In our case, this is thermally modified wood, which does not rot at all. Over time, it will lighten and visually age, just as we intended. But overall, it will remain a strong and reliable material for decades. This is a very meticulous job. It took a long time and ultimately took 3 weeks of daily work, but it was definitely worth it. See for yourself. By this time, autumn was already approaching and working outdoors was becoming uncomfortable, so we finally got to the secret bunker. The first thing we decided to do was dismantle the old stove. This was done quite easily, as clay had been used as the mortar, which had dried out over time, and the masonry literally crumbled. But the bricks themselves are quite usable, so we carefully stacked them at the edge of the site. We removed all the construction debris and started dismantling the floor. This work also didn't take much time. all the boards turned out to be in excellent condition, as well as the beams that were lying in the foundation. Just one day of work, and we have a sandy foundation under our feet. By that time, we had made one large panoramic window, which would replace two small ones. We cut the windows, enlarged the opening, and installed a new huge window in just a couple of hours. The next step was to clean the walls in order to assess their condition and understand the further plan. As we went meter by meter, it became clear that the wood was in excellent condition. This was very pleasing. And now, after another week, we have this result. Meanwhile, earthworks were underway. According to the plan, a wine cellar with a spiral staircase will be located here. In this cellar, we will make a secret door in the future, but let's go through everything in order. In the end, ultimately, the earthworks took approximately 2 weeks in total, and we are currently and successfully working on this shaft, into which we are efficiently and carefully installing ventilation and preparing for concrete in a detailed manner. For this, the first thing we do is cut the polymer reinforcement and start tying it in the shaft, while simultaneously constructing the formwork. In order to obtain a perfectly even round formwork, we go to the workshop and craft this kind of structure. After just half a day of work, we finally installed the last element of the formwork. We add reinforcement on top. and the hour X has come. Testing the strength of our structure, in the end, we will pour 5 cubic meters of concrete into this structure, which is 10 tons, the weight of 7 average cars or 3 elephants. And this information, to put it mildly, made everyone nervous. But, as you can see, everything went according to plan, and the formwork held up. While the concrete is drying, we have a free week, and we decided to work on the sewage system. It is clear that there is no central sewage system in this remote area, so we dug a huge pit, where we placed this smart septic tank. The working scheme is extremely simple. All the contents are filtered, and at the output, we get water that is 95% purified, which flows out through the drainage channel. As a result, this septic system will need to be cleaned once every couple of years. There is also a Wi-Fi module that allows us to see how full the tank is, so we no longer have to check what's inside with a stick. A week later, the concrete has set and it is safe to walk on it, which is what we did, while also clearing the room. The task for today is to install the sewage system in the house, as we will start pouring the floor tomorrow. We have already laid the wiring, sewage pipe, and plumbing. After we have laid all the communications, the next step is to create a small foundation. Soon we will build a brick wall right here to create a separate bathroom. We dug a trench, laid the reinforcement, mixed the concrete, and poured the foundation. Now almost everything is ready for the screed. We just need to level the sand and compact it. Before pouring the floor with concrete, it needs to be insulated so that the house retains heat better. For this, we took this type of insulation and methodically laid it on the floor. The next layer is a film. This is done to prevent the concrete from getting into the joints between the insulation and to minimize heat loss. And here is the long-awaited cement. This is dry screed. It is much easier to work with this mixture. First, we methodically fill the floor with the mixture and level it meter by meter. While the concrete is drying, we decided to deal with water. Obviously, there is no central water supply here, so we decided to drill a well. First, we determined the location, and then the professionals took over. For 2 days, they were digging, filling, and twisting something. Our task was simple, not to interfere with them, and we accomplished this task excellently. As a reward for this, we received the long-awaited water, after which we had to dig a pit, place huge concrete rings there, and connect all the communications. To bring water into the house, we lay the pipe in this trench, which goes directly to the house. By that time, the concrete in our future bunker had set well, and we began to remove the formwork. As I mentioned, this will be a wine cellar in which we will make a hidden secret door, and behind this door will be the secret bunker, but it still needs to be built. And this is not an easy task. As you can see, we will have to dig inside the room. To do this, the first thing we do is remove the old floor and some unclear concrete bases. Then, methodically, shovel by shovel, we remove the sand, lifting it up. Unfortunately, there is no other way to do this. It is impossible to bring machinery into such a small space, and as a result, we had to do everything manually, gradually building wooden walls that will later serve as formwork. And so, after 2 weeks of daily digging, the main volume of earth has been removed. To be honest, this turned out to be the hardest work we had to do, as it was freezing outside most of the time. The next step is to make the formwork for pouring the support columns on which the first floor will stand. This formwork is made from the same wood as the walls. Reinforcement needs to be placed inside this formwork. We cut it to size, tie it together, and lower it into each column. And here is another strength test. This is a couple of tons of concrete. The task for today is to completely fill these 9 columns, which is what we are working on. The next step is to prudently lay the pipe. This will be our ventilation. We dug a trench, laid the pipe, and buried it again. As you remember, we have 2 separate underground rooms that are ultimately supposed to be connected to each other. So we finish the earthworks and finally see the door at the end of the tunnel. We cut an opening. A hidden door will soon stand here, behind which there will be a corridor. the walls of which we are erecting. We create a temporary ceiling on top. Essentially, this is the formwork onto which we will pour concrete. But first, of course, we lay the reinforcement. Since this entire room will be filled with concrete to one level, we level the surface around the perimeter and locally pour concrete in a small section. This is the ceiling of the underground corridor. It will be much easier this way, and then we will pour the main layer on top of it. The next step is to lay the insulation, following the exact same scheme as in the first room. Then the insulating film layer, and the base is almost ready to receive 10 tons of concrete. Only the reinforcement is left, which we are working on. In the end, we installed a metal profile that will serve as a guide when leveling the concrete. Just a little patience, and everything will become clear visually. And finally, the long-awaited concrete and the test of our formwork's strength. After 2 weeks, it became clear that the test was passed with flying colors. We are dismantling the formwork so that the concrete dries better. Next, we remove the embedded guides. And we are going down into the bunker again. Now we have the task of improving the floor. We set the level, order the tiles, and then everything is clear without further words. After we have laid the tiles around the perimeter, we fill the joints with dry mortar and we can move on to the next operation, making the staircase. First, we design an accurate model based on our measurements. In the end, the staircase will look like this. Now we just need to materialize it. For this, we took this kind of pipe, which will serve as the base, and we cleaned it of rust. Then we started making the steps. All steps will be of the same shape and size, so we immediately cut dozens of blanks for all the steps. The next stage is welding these frames. This will be the base for the steps. Now we just need to assemble this constructor. It took us only 1 working day to complete this task. And by the end of this day, we begin painting the entire structure. While the staircase is drying, we are working on the inserts for the steps. We cut them from solid wood, first using a rough saw, then we plane the surfaces and fit them to the exact size, as you can see on the screen. The next day we focus on installation. This is the most enjoyable moment when all the pieces come together and you can see the finished result. So, we have a staircase that leads down to the future secret corridor. According to the plan, there should be a mysterious door at the end of this corridor. We started making it. First, we cut the metal. First of all, we need to make a sturdy door frame and the door's base. When the main structure is ready, we install an electric lock in the door as our door opens with a fingerprint scan. The next step is decoration. First, we cut the decorative overlay on the CNC machine. Then we decorate the plywood sheet and prepare all the elements for painting. After 2 days, when the paint has dried, we begin assembling our fantastic door. Backlighting, wires, overlays, all of this is assembled into such a door. And finally, the long-awaited installation. By that time, spring had arrived, and we can work outside normally again, and we took advantage of it. The first thing we did was level the area around the house, as we plan to work on the facade soon. To do this, it is necessary to remove the excess soil and debris that has accumulated recently. The next step is insulation. We bought special panels, which you can see on the screen. It's all very simple here, as the size of these panels is huge and their installation takes just a couple of minutes. After we insulated the back of the house, we proceed to the front side. The scheme here is a bit more complicated, and we need to create an additional structure. You will understand later why it is needed, but for now, just take my word for it that it is necessary. The next step is to work on the gable side. First, we dismantle the old facade. After the old boards are removed, we proceed to insulation according to the already established scheme. When the entire house is completely insulated around the perimeter, we lay insulation entirely around the foundation, and on top of it, we place drainage material that will divert water away from the house. And after a week, the entire house is insulated, and we started on the facade decoration. The first thing we do is sheathe the wall and install the soffit. The white plastic windows do not fit our design, so we repaint them. The next step is to prepare the material for the main facade of the house. This is dry ash board. We level the surface and calibrate all the boards to the same size. After that, we just need to cut the boards at an angle, and now we can proceed with the installation. On site, we cut the boards to size and drill holes for fastening, one board at a time. After all the boards are cut to size, we treat them with oil and finally secure them to the facade. As you remember, we have planned a large triangular window on the front side of the house. We have started its installation. We installed the frame, set the double-glazed units, and of course realized that such a window is not suitable for us. In order for it to fit into our design, we decided to create a decorative overlay. Using graphic software, we made a couple of options based on the actual dimensions. We made adjustments, approved the final result, and now all that's left is to bring our design to life. For this, we take plywood and use a chip on the machine to create our overlay. Once all the elements are ready, we proceed to painting. For this, we took grey graphite paint, which will be encountered again in the interior. And here it is finally, the long-awaited moment, the installation of the overlay. In just a few minutes, a simple cheap window transforms into a fairy tale one. We beautify the window on the street side in exactly the same way. Now that the window is done, we have accurate measurements and can finish the facade work, which is exactly what we did. So, the work on finishing the facade is almost complete, and the house has transformed beyond recognition. But there are still 2 points left. The first is the drainage. Here, everything is extremely simple. We cut the pipe to size, assemble it, and test it. The final touch is decorating the wall with traditional national patterns. First, we cut the composition from sheets of metal. The next day, we head to the homestead and start the installation. This is ordinary steel, which we decided not to protect in any way, and according to the plan, the entire metal should rust over the next couple of weeks. And now, after a month, we return to assess the final result of the house's facade. The work on the exterior of the house is complete, but there is still much to do with the interior decor. First, we decided to build a small room. This will be the bathroom. After dismantling the old stove, there was a lot of good antique brick left. We cleaned it, marked the boundaries of the future room, and began to build the walls. This brick is over 70 years old and was made by hand. I think it's very symbolic that after 70 years it is gaining a second life again, in the same house and almost in the same place. The next step we decided to tackle was the ceiling. The flooring is quite sturdy, but we are not satisfied with its appearance, so we decided to cover it with decorative panels. We cut the boards and leveled them. Next, we cut the plywood and cover the entire ceiling. When all the sheets are fitted, we take them off again and head to the workshop to decorate these sheets. For this, we apply glue and lay out the oak slats. Next, we place this sandwich under a press, and after a few hours, the panel is ready. All that's left is to sand it and paint it. We are doing the painting on site. Before attaching the panels to the ceiling, we decided to paint the beams. As you remember, we painted our old white windows on the outside. Now we are doing the same, but inside the house. In just a couple of hours, the windows look much nicer. And now, finally, we can cover the ceiling. This is done quickly and easily, as all the sheets were initially cut to size. The next step, following the same scheme, is to cover one of the walls. Wooden blocks, plywood, and self-tapping screws. So, the walls and ceiling are ready. Now we need to deal with the floor. First, we level the floor using a mixture. After the mixture has dried, we prime the entire surface and start laying our homemade parquet. Parquet made from slabs. We apply glue to the floor and gradually, board by board, assemble the puzzle. These are solid oak slats that we previously made in the workshop. In this particular section of the house, we have designated a compact area specifically for the kitchen. The flooring in this space is crafted from thin, solid oak strips, which, while aesthetically pleasing, have developed numerous cracks and defects over time. To address these imperfections and ensure a smooth, durable surface, we plan to meticulously fill each of these gaps with a high-quality epoxy resin. This process will not only enhance the appearance of the floor, but also improve its longevity and functionality, making it a perfect foundation for our kitchen activities. We mixed a couple of buckets and methodically started pouring into all the cracks. A week later, when the resin had dried, we began sanding. It's not the easiest task, but it was definitely worth it. In the end, it took about a week to finish the floor. While the guys were finishing the sanding of the floor and slabs, work was underway on the wall panels in the workshop. And finally, the long-awaited installation and finishing coat of the floor. So, the walls and floor are ready. Now all that's left is to decorate everything. As decor, we decided to make a talisman. First, we selected a suitable slab, leveled it, and then started the bas-relief milling. As a result, we will have a three-dimensional image of the god Veles. After milling, we coat our protective layer with varnish and install it in its place. The old wiring in the house is not suitable, so we replace it with new wiring in this retro design. The next step is to install the portal cabinet that we built in our workshop. In the finale, we add the missing elements, slats, lighting, and windowsills. And after 3 years of daily work, we have this picture. This is not the end of our story, so be sure to subscribe, as there is still a lot of interesting content ahead.